Well, a happy July 4th to all of you out there. Hopefully you are all off from work and enjoying yourself and relaxing, maybe spending some time with the family. But here at Brother Counsel Studios, we are still working hard to bring you the content and analysis that you want. So today we are going to be jumping into the Paul O'Keefe interview. He sat down with Christina Rex, and Christina Rex was covering this trial from beginning to end. And they sat down together and had a short, interesting interview, and I've got some observations that I would like to make and share with you about that interview. Before we do, I do want to also remind everybody that the offer is still good. I'm hoping an attorney will take me up on the offer, or if maybe you're watching this, you have some sort of persuasion with another law tuber who has been covering and following this trial and who has felt that the verdict should have been guilty. That's obviously not how I came out. I felt that after reviewing the facts and the evidence, and I didn't make any knee-jerk determinations or conclusions in this case. I waited for all the evidence to come in, and that's what I felt at the end of the trial. The verdict should have been not guilty, but I'm open to hearing other sides. I always like to have conversations about it. I think it would be interesting to have a dialogue with another attorney. I think a lot of people would be interested in seeing two attorneys talk about the same facts and evidence and how it could lead one attorney to feel that the verdict should be not guilty and another attorney to feel that the verdict should be guilty. So please, if you're out there, take me up on this offer. Let's figure it out. Let's do it for everybody. And I think it'll be very interesting. All right. Without any further ado, let's jump into the interview with Paul O'Keefe and Christina Rex.
My first question is obvious. Just how are you doing? How's your family doing?
And by the way, I apologize in advance for the audio. This is as the best one that I can find. It just seems that the audio is just a little bit low in this specific interview. So just crank the volume up on your computer or wherever you're listening. But there's really not much that I can do about the volume here. And I apologize.
I mean, we're doing all right, hanging in there. It's been.
Oh, also, I'm going to put this on 1.5 so that we can get through it a little bit quicker. And maybe you've already seen the interview already. So we're just going to try to get through this a little bit quicker, and I'll pause it when I have some observations for you.
A long, painful 2.5 years. And I mean, with the mistrial that happened the other day, obviously it wasn't ideal, but if we have to do it again, we'll do it again.
And that's something you're going to be hearing consistently throughout his interview. We have to do it again. We're going to do it again. I don't care how many times, we're going to do it again, because I believe deep down that Karen Read is absolutely 100% guilty, and I'm not going to stop till justice is served. And again, this is his brother. His brother died, and he wants justice, and he believes 100% that Karen Read is guilty. So he's saying that he is going to try this case again. Now, of course, he keeps saying we, even though he really has very little determination about whether the Commonwealth is actually going to bring this case again. But he's kind of all putting himself together with that camp, because that's the camp that he's in.
So we're ready to go.
Did you, prior to jury deliberations, ever think a mistrial was even possible?
I kept everything was on the table, I guess, but obviously hoping and confident that we were going to get the conviction that we were looking for. So as far as a mistrial, yes, it's something we didn't want, obviously, but it's just a bump in the road. And like I said, we'll do it again. We'll do it as many times as we have to.
You'll be back in court every day for another long trial.
Absolutely.
How are your parents?
They're doing all right. That's more of my concern, is that they have to go through this again. I mean, I'll do it 10 more times if I have to, but I hate the fact that they have to go through this all again. We don't know where it's going to happen, when it's going to happen. But I mean, overall, they're doing okay.
Now, we have to remember here that this is the victim's family, and my hearts completely go out to Paul O'Keefe and Aaron O'Keefe, and certainly the parents. The parents have gone through hell. Their daughter died suddenly from cancer. Their son-in-law then died, and then now John O'Keefe is murdered. I mean, they are absolutely living a nightmare. I mean, your hearts have to go out for the O'Keefe family.
Mm-hmm. And they have John's kids now too, your sister's kids.
Yeah, so they're living in my brother's house in Canton, raising my niece and nephew, who are 16 and 13. I wanted them to come down here and live with us, but my niece didn't want to leave Canton, didn't want to leave her friends, didn't want to leave her house, and kind of hard to force a kid who's been through as much as they've been through to kind of shake up their world.
So now Paul is saying that he really wanted to invite his niece to come stay with him. We know initially John was the one who had to move in with the kids, but now at least Paul is saying that he was completely willing to have the kids stay by him
for, I guess, a third time.
Yeah, I mean, can you just talk about Kaylee and Patrick? I mean, they, because we didn't put them on camera or anything, of course, during the trial, I had a lot of people ask me, like, what were they like? And they seemed like, for a reason, very, very strong kids.
They're great kids. They're strong kids. They're resilient kids.
And can you imagine what these kids went through? I mean, these kids absolutely went through hell and back also.
they have every excuse in the world not to be good kids. My niece Kaylee, super strong. When asked if she wanted to testify, we told them they didn't have to, and she said absolutely she wants to. She wanted her voice heard, her story heard. Wanted people to listen to her. She felt like because she was 14 at the time that no one wanted to listen to her. So she was strong and insisted on doing it. And my nephew was, he wanted to support her. So he said, if she does, I'll do it. So I'm proud of them both for doing what they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's amazing. They actually took the stand, and remember what they said. They said essentially that the fighting escalated near the end of the relationship there. They were constantly fighting, John and Karen, and that essentially was what their testimony was, which by all accounts seemed to have been the case, which I don't think there was much dispute about.
Yeah, they're really strong when they got on the stand. It's amazing. Do you feel comfortable telling me, just from all that you've learned over the last 2.5 years, like what you think happened that night?
Oh, we know what happened.
So listen to the way that she asked the question. Okay, she asked, after being here for 2 years, watching this trial, hearing all the evidence, what do you think happened? What do you think happened? And his response is, well, I know what happened. We know what happened.
We know that Johnny and Karen were arguing. It was kind of towards the end of their relationship. Things weren't well. They were drinking and arguing and fighting, and in an intoxicated state of rage and jealousy, she just decided that she was going to do something about it.
Isn't that interesting the way that he said that? Now, we do know that at the end of the relationship, they were fighting a lot. We do know that. We know that earlier that day, there's some text messages back and forth between John and Karen. They obviously got into a fight that morning and was continuing throughout the whole day. We do know that. That's 100% true and accurate. We also know that they were drinking. We know that that was true from the different bars, C.F. McCarthy's and the Waterfall. We know that that's true also. And then when it gets to, and then she ran him over with her car, he changes it to, she decided she's going to do something about that. In her rage, in her drunken rage, decided to do something about it. It's just an interesting way that you would frame this. Why don't you just say, and then she killed him. She ran him over with the car. Now, eventually he's going to get to that, but I think it's interesting that his first choice of words is to say, well, she decides she's going to do something about it.
And, put the car in reverse and ran him down and left him there to die. And we figured it out as soon as she left the house that day when she came over. We didn't talk to any investigators, state police, nobody.
So he figured it out right away. He figured it out from day one. He didn't need any of this evidence. He knew already from day one.
My mother had said, do you think she had something to do with this? And I said, we're not going to think like that. Went outside to the driveway to look at her car, and her car was gone. It was a blizzard. I knew what the driving conditions were like coming from the hospital to Canton. And I knew that they were going back to Dighton, which was a much further drive. So we put it together pretty quickly.
I was going to ask you that next. So you took words out of my mouth. It was like, when did you realize? It was literally that morning.
Yeah, so I would say early afternoon when they came back to the house. She wanted to come over and see the kids. Didn't really interact with them at all.
So she came over because she wanted to see the kids, but then she didn't really interact with them. So that looks like she's completely lying about it. What do you mean? You want to come interact with the kids and then you don't even you want to come see the kids and then you don't even interact with them? You just gather your belongings and leave? That looks a little funny, doesn't it?
Was there for probably a total of 30 minutes. Didn't say much or anything. And half of her time was upstairs gathering her things. Then my wife spoke to her on the phone on the way back to Dighton. And she told my wife that just have to remember the bad times. And I don't think I'm ever going to talk to you guys again. And
that came out during trial, as we know. And, he could be reiterating what came out in trial, that was what she told, Karen Reed told Aaron O'Keefe, that I can just remember the bad times and that I'm probably never going to see you again. And then he's going to explain that, well, why would you say that unless you did it? And that's how that really solidified in his mind that Karen Reed was guilty of murdering John O'Keefe. Now, we do know also that their last conversation was an argument. That's what it seems to have been. Last conversation was an argument. That's what she repeated to the paramedics in the car also. So that could be the last thing that you think about, because that's the last conversation you had with John O'Keefe before he died. So that also, doesn't necessarily mean you're only going to remember the bad times. Like, why? Well, because you're just talking about the bad. You've just gotten to arguments. That was literally what the end of the relationship was. It was all arguments. And the fact that she said that I'm probably never going to see you again. Well, I don't know, maybe there's a murder case going on, and I don't know what's, John O'Keefe's dead now, and we're going to be going through a whole lot now. And, I don't know if we're going to be able to have the same type of relationship. So, yeah, he is reading a lot into that. But again, these are the talking points of the prosecution in the Commonwealth. And therefore he's going to be using this to prove the case that Karen Reed's guilty.
Was that phone call what made you sure of what had happened?
Absolutely. Yeah. We already, like I said, we put the pieces together on our own, and that just really solidified it.
Mm-hmm.
Why would somebody say that? Why would someone say, if you didn't do anything, why would you say you're never going to talk to us again? Or why do you have to remember the bad times? Almost like justifying what you did.
Right. How would you have expected her to act in that situation if she hadn't done something?
More sad, empathetic, sympathetic. But like I said, when she was at the house, she barely said a word.
And I think that that's a good point, because even if you're in a fight with your long-term boyfriend and then he ends up dead, you're still going to be sad. You're going to be sad from it. So you should at least show some sort of signs that you're sad and sympathetic and empathetic. And he's saying that she didn't show any signs like that at all.
You know, she wanted to be there for the kids. My nephew came home. My niece was already home by the time she got there, and her family arrived. And I sat down, my nephew in the other room. She sat right next to him. I explained to him that JJ's, something happened and he's no longer with us. She didn't say a word. And right after that, she went upstairs and started gathering her belongings. And the next thing you know, they were gone.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's hard. It's a strange behavior.
Very strange. Yep.
When did the whole narrative of her version of events become known to you?
Well, if you remember her first arraignment in Stoughton District Court,
Yeah.
Her attorney, David Unetti, had said this is a tragic accident. His client had no criminal intent. Mm-hmm. And then, fast forward to, I guess, when Alan Jackson came on board. And, they teamed up with a blogger to get their story that they concocted and put together and flooded out there. And people.
So the fact that Unetti said this, and this is a point that's brought up before, the fact that Unetti said at the arraignment, which is very, very early on in the case, before you really have a lot of the evidence that to really figure out what your defense is going to be, the fact that Unetti said that this is a tragic accident, and it is a tragic accident, it certainly is. Did Karen Read have criminal intent? No, she didn't have criminal intent. So that right away, you're just attacking the charges. Unetti is attacking the charges. There's no criminal intent. You're charging her with second-degree murder. There's no criminal intent here. And this is a tragic accident. Now, does that absolutely mean that Karen Read was responsible for the accident as opposed to intending to hit him? That could be perhaps interpreted different ways. But then he said also that Alan Jackson teamed up with a vlogger, referring to Turtle Boy, right? So is there any evidence of that Alan Jackson teamed up with Turtle Boy? I know that seems to be that they're spinning it that way, but it seemed very clearly from all the pretrial motions, from everything, that Alan Jackson was saying that he has absolutely nothing to do with Turtle Boy. And I don't know if there's any hard evidence showing that there is some sort of connection. I think that there's something about phone calls maybe between Karen Read and Turtle Boy. I'm not 100% sure about that. Maybe someone can remind me or show me that in the comments. But sir, I don't know if this is actually an accurate statement that Alan Jackson teamed up with a vlogger, Turtle Boy.
People were only hearing one side of the story and coming to conclusions before actual evidence in the trial had actually begun.
And that's a good point, by the way, to come to conclusions before evidence is presented in trial, which is my approach to all these trials, is that no matter what's coming out in the news, no matter what I see attached to an exhibit as a motion, I've been in this game long enough to know that things can be spun in 100 different ways. And therefore, until I actually see all the evidence that comes out in the trial, I'm not jumping onto any ship. And sometimes when I was on these podcasts or on these other shows during the Karen Read trial as was going on, I was keeping a very open mind. I was saying, yes, we have these problems. We certainly have some issues with the prosecution's case. We have some questions, but I'm still keeping an open mind until I see everything, all the evidence presented in court. But once all the evidence is presented in court, well, then you can start making conclusions and you can start voicing opinions. And I think that really his point here, I think, is well taken. Before the evidence is presented in court, no one should be jumping onto any bandwagon. I don't think that's fair either.
A lot of the public was misinformed, because they were only getting one side of the story. And, we didn't come out and tell our side of the story or, what we thought or knew happened. We've kept a low profile and have been silent through this whole ordeal. But, now it's time. Now it's time for people to understand the truth.
And I agree. Now it is time. Now it is time for people to understand the truth, because now all the evidence came out. So now people can actually make informed decisions. So he's right. He's just saying, well, therefore, the truth is obviously that Karen Read is guilty, but not everybody agrees with him.
And the jurors, we thank them. They did a great job. They put in a lot of hours, paid a lot of attention, worked hard. Unfortunately, they weren't able to come to, a consensus as far as the verdict goes. But, we have another chance at it, and hopefully the jury that we get for the second time around will we'll see things more clearly.
So that was interesting. He said that the jury did a good job. So he's saying the jury did a good job. Well, the jury's good job was a hung jury. So I think really he really wants to say that the jury did do a good job. The jury did not find her guilty, and hopefully another jury will find her guilty. So yeah, they worked hard. I mean, you can say that they worked hard and they spent a lot of time going through the case. That's true. But ultimately, you don't think that they did do a good job, or at least the jurors that felt that the evidence did not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Karen Reed is guilty.
So, just so I'm clear, you think this all started when Alan Jackson showed up, and Karen, throughout the course of this trial, you think she knows what she did?
She knows exactly what she did, and she's trying to buy and lie her way out of this. Refusing to take accountability for her actions. Not only that, but pointing the finger and blaming innocent people.
Yeah, talk to me about that. I mean, because the thing is, the story on the defensive side is not just, oh, she didn't do it. It's she didn't do it, and all these other people did.
Yeah, I mean, she's pointing the finger at everybody. Everyone's lying except for her, according to her. I think we had 67 witnesses testify. 68. I'm sorry, testify. And according to them, they're all lying and they're not credible. And which, I mean, there's first responders that were just doing their job that day. Jen McCabe, Kerry Roberts.
Now, that's a good point. And this is a point that I made on my channel a few times. The fact that you have people that are not last names with McCabe and Albert, paramedics, who have said, well, Karen Reed said, I hit him. And it was a number of different first responders and paramedics who are saying that. So to say, oh, they're all in one big conspiracy together, that's a lot harder to swallow. And to say that, no, all the 68 witnesses are not credible. So that is a decent point.
All they did was pick up the phone and help because she was asking for help. And according to them, the only one telling the truth is her.
Right. So
now, to say that according to Karen Reed, the only person saying the truth is her is not 100% accurate. I mean, there were some witnesses on her side also. Remember, Lucky Lawford said that he didn't see anything. Was he lying? Are you calling him a liar? What about the biomechanical engineers who said that, the science doesn't back up that this is what happened? So are they also lying? So it's not just Karen Reed versus the whole world, but that's certainly, the way that he wants to paint this.
I don't even know what to call them. We have a variety of names. The pink people. They turned on all those people first, Jen McCabe, Matt McCabe. But then how have they treated you guys over the course of the last year and a half?
Well, if you just go back to any video of us walking into court during pretrial hearings, yelling, screaming, calling us names, to this day, I don't know what I did wrong. I get messages all the time, whether through Facebook or other ways of communication, telling me that I'm a moron, I'm stupid, need to open my eyes and all this stuff. But I ignore those. I don't really care what people say to me because this isn't about me. This is about my brother. And I like to think I know a little bit more of what's going on in the case than people that are just reading stuff on the internet.
And that's a good point, right? I mean, why should anybody be attacking Paul O'Keefe? He had nothing to do with it. It's his brother, and he's dead, and he's grieving, and he wants justice for his brother. What can possibly be his fault here? The only fault that people are now directing at him and screaming at him and I guess abusing him and sending these terrible messages is because he's in the prosecution's camp. He believes their story. So therefore, that's why they're just grouping him together. Really, he wasn't there. He's not making up any stories. What did he say so terrible on the stand? He didn't. He wasn't even involved that night. So all this stuff all this abuse that's directed at him is completely unwarranted, and it shouldn't happen. And he's right about that.
And there's been things said about me, accusations about me, all types of things that just aren't true. But again, I just brush it off because this isn't about me.
So if these people buy into this big conspiracy, right, that Brian Albert's a murderer or whoever, okay, if they buy into that, why are they turning on you guys? Has that ever made sense to you?
Because we don't believe in a crazy conspiracy theory that holds no merit, no evidence. I mean, we know these people. I mean, Jen McCabe has been a family friend of ours. She was friends with my sister. We've known her for over 10 years. She was very helpful with, picking Kaylee up to and fro when he took over raising the kids. Kerry Roberts we've known for a very, very long time, right? And at the time, she didn't really know Jen McCabe or any of the McCabes or Alberts. And her testimony corroborated everything that Jen said. And the defense, I think, was scared of her and didn't want to ask her any questions. They just wanted her off the stand.
Now, I don't know if that's exactly why the defense didn't ask Kerry Roberts any questions. The reason why most probably they didn't ask her any questions because she didn't really say anything that really hurt their case. And she was just saying the same events that was repeated over 100 times during that trial, that Karen was hysterical that morning. She called Kerry Roberts, called Jennifer McCabe, was screaming, Kerry, Jen. And that exactly what came out. So what exactly are you going to use for cross-examination to try to poke any holes in Kerry Roberts' testimony? So he's presenting it, she's this goddess and she should just, and they're just scared to even start up with her. Or it's just that there's really not much that she was really doing to really hurt the case that much.
And I guess the negative or hate that's directed towards me, mostly me and my mother, is because we support these people who are being falsely accused of something they didn't do. right? And their lives have been turned upside down and partially ruined. You know, Colin Albert, who was a 17-year-old kid at the time, his life has been turned upside down and ruined. I've gotten to know the Alberts through all this, and they're all good people. So just because we don't believe in a crazy conspiracy theory, and we believe that Karen Read is guilty of.
Stop. What did he just say? We believe Karen Read is guilty. Well, that's very different than what he said before. He said, we know Karen Read is guilty. And now, into the interview, about 12 minutes into the interview, he says, we believe Karen Read is guilty. Very, very different choice of words. Knowledge versus belief.
Killing the brother. You know, they take it on us.
Doesn't it feel sometimes like your brother's forgotten in all this?
Absolutely. All the time. It's turned into the Karen Read show. You know, she walks through a crowd that cheers her on. She goes out in public, takes pictures, signs autographs. She's just living her life like nothing's ever happened.
Well, let's just hold on a second there, okay? To say that she's living her life as if nothing has ever happened, I mean, yes, she has a lot of support. And after seeing all the evidence come in, I think there's some good reason for that. But to say that this is exactly how she wants to live her life, I think she'd much prefer not have to go through this whole escapade, not be charged, and just be living out the rest of her life doing whatever she wants. So I don't think that that's really an accurate statement. However, the fact that we shouldn't lose focus that John O'Keefe died and he's most likely murdered by someone somehow, that's a tragedy. And that we should also think about. Now, there could be two parts of injustice. There's an injustice, the fact that he died and who's going to pay for that. That's one form of injustice. But there's also another form of injustice where an innocent woman could be sitting in jail for the rest of her life. That's a tremendous injustice as well. So it's not just that, oh, this is all about the Karen Read show. This is about a lot of very concerned people. And again, I'm not going to say that there haven't been people that crossed the lines. I'm sure that there were people that crossed the lines. But there's a lot of outpour in this case that they don't want to see another injustice done in this case where an innocent woman is sitting behind bars for the rest of her life. So both can be true at the same time. It doesn't have to be either the Karen Read show or justice for John O'Keefe. This is just, we want justice for John O'Keefe, but we also don't want someone who's innocent sitting in prison.
And meanwhile, my brother's been gone for almost 2.5 years. And I just want people to go back to who the victim is in this. It's not her. It's my brother.
It's not her yet. Although if she was innocent this whole time, then she is somewhat of a victim as well. Now, she didn't lose her life, but if she was sitting through the past 2 years, who knows how much money she had to pay for Alan Jackson and Yannetti, that's an injustice. That's somewhat of a victim. Now, of course, she has her life, but if she was really innocent, you can't just say that she's not a victim at all. Now, of course, we can't lose sight of the fact that John O'Keefe lost his life, and he was a Boston police officer. He's one wonderful guy who adopted these two, his nephew and niece, and raised them. It's unbelievable what he did. Both can be true.
What do you want people to know about John? You call him Johnny, kids call him JJ.
Yeah. I mean, my older brother. So, I mean, generous, loyal, sometimes a pain in the ass to me. I'm sorry, pain in the butt to me.
Say pain in the ass.
You know, just because he was my older brother, but he just was there if you needed him. Took care of the people that he loved. Good-hearted guy who didn't deserve any of this. You know, he rearranged and uprooted his life. Went from a single the bachelor lifestyle living in Boston to moving into instant dad role. And you know, that's something that obviously everyone admires him the most for, and I do too. You know, it wasn't easy for him at the beginning, but you know, he learned to figure it out, and you know, we all helped as much as we could without getting in the way. Just an overall good guy.
And I assume he chose to do that, right? I mean, your sister's situation is unimaginable.
Yeah. So then, well, after my brother-in-law passed away, we had to figure out, all right, what do we do? And at the time, my wife and I were like, all right, we'll take them in. At the time, we had a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old. So we were trying to figure out how are we gonna do this? Our house was small. We didn't really want to live in.
And it's really unbelievable what he did. I mean, when John O'Keefe stepped up and adopted these 2 children, and he's saying how he couldn't do it. They had 2 very little kids, and they had a little house. How are they going to bring in another 2 kids? Okay, we can understand this all. And John O'Keefe is just, what he did was extremely admirable. It's unbelievable what he did. And nobody should take that away.
In the house that they both passed away in, but we were trying to figure it out the best way possible. And then Johnny just stepped up one day and just said, I got it.
Wow.
And then pretty much moved in the next day and took it from there for 8 years.
So there's a reason that's why so many people describe that that's what they admired about him.
Yeah, I
He
mean,
stepped up.
a selfless act, changing your life, to take care of his family and people he loved. Yeah, I mean, that's him in a nutshell.
I know I asked you how your mom's doing already or how your parents are doing, but I just can't imagine for her losing 2 kids.
No.
Is she like a different person now?
Is she a different person? She's going through hell. I mean, it's unbelievable what she's going through, and it's just heart wrenching, really heartbreaking what she's going through, and it can be even more heartbreaking if she's being told a story and convinced of a story, which Paul is also completely hook, line, and sinker in, that Karen Reed absolutely murdered John O'Keefe beyond a reasonable doubt. So on top of everything, and then to feel that you don't have justice because the person who the prosecution, the Commonwealth told you did it is not convicted, that just, of course, it adds insult to injury, and it's just terrible. It's terrible what's going on.
She's a strong woman. I'll give her that. Yeah, it's unimaginable, just to lose them in the ways that she did. My sister suffering for 5.5 months with brain cancer.
Yeah.
But at least had the opportunity to say goodbye. And then, my brother just being taken from us so quickly and senselessly. I know somehow she keeps it all together. My father, quiet, kind of keeps to himself. But I mean, overall, what they've gone through it's unfair.
Yeah.
Unimaginable. But they're strong and they keep moving forward, and just same thing. They do what they have to do to take care of their family.
I have to ask you, we got ushered out of the courtroom pretty quickly on Monday. You had a little exchange with Karen. Do you mind? What happened there?
So throughout the trial, she likes to turn and look at me and smirk.
Which is interesting because throughout my watching of this trial, I do know that she smirked a lot, Karen Reed. I think most of the time she was smirking at her attorneys, at the people at the table. Now, of course, he's sitting right opposite her. So as soon as she turns, it almost looks like they're face to face. So I'm not sure if this is just really him thinking that she's smirking at him and really she's directing the smirk at Yannetti. But this is certainly what he felt. He felt that she was smirking at him throughout the trial.
She's never once made eye contact with my wife, Erin. So when Mistrial was announced, she turned and looked right at Erin and gave her a smirk. And I went over and hugging and celebrating to some extent. And I just said, you're not done yet.
Well, of course she should be celebrating because, first of all, she believes she's innocent, and she should be celebrating because she doesn't have to go to prison now. So what do you expect? The person who just got not convicted to go to prison can go home. Of course they're going to be celebrating. And then that's when he said, we're not done yet. And that's what his stance has been, that we're not going to stop at nothing and bring this case as many times as possible until we convict her, because he knew from day one that she was guilty. From day one, before seeing any other evidence, he knew already from day one.
Did she say something back?
No, but I mean, it was an emotional day, emotional moment, being in that courtroom, sitting so closely, and that's something that she wanted.
Yeah, can you talk about that? I mean, the courtroom switch, we know all the legal reasons why it happened, but you guys were like arm's length from her for the entire trial.
Yep.
Well, do we know all the legal reasons for it? Well, the way that he presented is that that's what she wanted. She wanted me to be right next to her. Well, that's not exactly what it was, right? The reason why the courtroom had to be that way, and the reason why he ended up taking that seat, first of all, he didn't have to sit in that seat. He can sit anywhere. He can sit in the back row also. All right. But it's not because she wanted him next to her, which sounds like what you hear from the interview. It's because the jury had to be able to see the witness. That was the issue. And the witness testifying on the other side, the jury would not be able to see the actual witness. And of course, the jury has to observe the witness. And that's in one of the jury instructions is for the jury to notice how a witness testifies. So, of course, it's a violation to not be able to have the jury see the witness. So they had to rearrange the courtroom so that the jury can now see, every single person in the jury can see the witness testifying. Now, what that ended up happening now is that now, okay, Paul's going to sit in a different area, and that's going to be very close to Karen Reed. But this is not like, oh, this is what she wanted. She wanted me right next to him.
I guess after a while, you just got used to it. But yeah, showing up every day, sitting that close to the person that took my brother away from us, it was not easy. It took a lot to not say anything. But again, it wasn't about me. We were there for one purpose only. That's to get justice for Johnny.
What did Adam and Laura say to you guys afterwards? Like, what, looking ahead?
Yeah, I mean, they were disappointed in the outcome, but Adam said, he goes, we're just gonna do it again. He goes, I'll start tomorrow. So they're confident. They have the truth on their side.
I mean, you gotta like that. They're confident. A little bit of a pause there. Are they really confident? We're not so sure about that, but they may have to bring this case again. Like I said, they may be pressured to bring this case again, whether they want to or not, whether they're confident or not.
You know, unfortunately, if you pay high-powered attorneys enough and put enough lies out there, you know, you start influencing people to the point where there's just no turning back. I think people just don't want to admit that they were wrong or duped. But you know, they're confident, and we're going to go at it again.
So again, I mean, he's kind of calling everybody who doesn't believe it to be duped, that we're all duped. So it's not just some crazy people out there who have bought into some crazy conspiracy theory, and all these other attorneys who have come out and felt that this is the verdict should have been not guilty. We've all been duped. You know, that's essentially what he's arguing here. Which again, it's I'm not trying to, you know, poke fun at him. I'm not trying to, you know, it's a sad situation. He's been working with the Commonwealth. That's what the victims' families do. They work with the Commonwealth. They work with the prosecution. They completely trust the prosecution. This is what happens in 99% of the times. And they have a certain trust between them and the prosecution that they actually have the right person. And therefore, it's very difficult for them to be able to objectively now look at the evidence and look at the facts here and say, you know, this does not equal a guilty, what should be a guilty verdict. It just doesn't equal that. So it's very hard for them to sit in that position. Therefore, they have to come up with other reasons why many other people out there, including attorneys and lawyers who have tried cases, feel that the verdict should be not guilty. It's very difficult for them. So I'm not trying to take anything. It's, you know, it's a sad situation. I think what we're seeing here is it's just sad. You feel bad.
He being Adam has been like, he's kept to himself a lot, similar to you guys over the course of this.
Yep.
Do you think that's been hard?
I'm sure it's been extremely hard on him. You know, he's not the type that looks at social media or pays attention to that stuff. He just keeps his head down and does his job.
Good for him.
You know, he's not a flashy attorney that wants to be on camera all the time and have press conferences on the stairs like some people. He's just a hardworking, you know, I guess nose to the grindstone kind of guy, and just does his job. You know, it's a very difficult job, but he's never once really complained about it, you know, to us anyway.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard on him. I know it's hard on Laura. I know it's been hard on everyone who's been involved in this, but everyone's determined that we're just going to do it again.
Has your circle of like the people who support you guys, has it grown? Has it gotten smaller over the course of all the noise outside of it?
And by the way, Adam Lally, I mean, for all the hate that he's taking from people, you know, it's very difficult to try a case. To try a case for 30 days, it's very difficult. And he did it all by himself. I mean, he did have some help, but nobody else got up there to cross-examine witnesses. And the defense did have three attorneys there helping. You know, of course, the main guy was Alan Jackson, and Yannetti also was the second punch. And, you know, Elizabeth Little did a little bit here and there. But it's very difficult to try a case like this. And you got to give credit to Adam Lally for standing in the rink with an attorney like Alan Jackson, like a Yannetti, to be able to do the best job that he can. So you gotta tip your hat to Adam Lally for doing the best job that he could, given the circumstances.
Yes.
So for me personally, I've kept my circle smaller. People that you were friends with or haven't seen in a while, you just don't know where their line's at, what they believe. So we've been forced to become very kind of like defensive, not as outgoing as we normally would be. But I think recently I think we're gaining some more support. I think people have been afraid, you know, to show up to court and I guess counter protest to the people that are outside. I think people have been in fear, but I think that's starting to turn. I think people want justice. They don't want this influence of, you know, social media and public perception based off of lies to, you know, to win or to take control of this.
Do you want?
Here again, the public perception based on lies. It's all based on lies. It's all based on being duped. It's all based on these social media crazy heads that are doing this. You know, it's not. It just really isn't. It's if you can take a step back and realize that a lot of people are not just falling, but they're talking about facts or talking about evidence that came out in court. It's not just lies. So it's just really hard to face that. You know, when you're Paul O'Keefe and you've been hearing one side of the story from the prosecution the entire time, it's very difficult to now step back and try to be objective.
People to show up with.
We'll take all the support we can get. Yeah, no, we're not going to turn anybody away. I mean, every time we go to court, you know, we're kind of portrayed as the bad guys.
Yeah.
You know, and at the end of the day, it's, you know, we lost a loved one. You know, but somehow we're still, I guess, vilified for just not believing in a crazy conspiracy.
Yeah. On that note, was it hard for you at all? I mean, there were certainly some moments in the case where there were weak spots exposed, right? Like I think about the solo cups and Trooper Proctor, who now is facing job consequences as a result of this. What was it like for you to listen to those moments that weren't necessarily benefiting the state's case?
Now, that's very interesting, the way that which weak spots, weak parts of the case did she decide to bring up to Paul O'Keefe? And I think anyone who's been following this case in this trial, and she has, wouldn't choose these two examples as the weak spots in the prosecution's case. You know, there's some other much more significant weak spots in the case. But on the other hand, I think she knows that. I think Christina Rex understands that there's a lot stronger questions to ask Paul O'Keefe about the weaknesses of the Commonwealth's case. The solo cups, yeah, they looked bad. They looked terrible. Does that mean that she didn't kill him? No, not necessarily, right? Trooper Proctor's, what about Trooper Proctor? She didn't even specifically say anything. And of course, what sticks out in everybody's minds are the text messages, and that's what he's going to talk about. So yeah, the text messages, yeah, they're unprofessional, they're terrible. He should have never done it, but it doesn't say anything about the integrity of the rest of the investigation of the case. Now, does she talk about, all those people who left the house didn't see a body there at 2:00 in the morning? And what about Lucky Law Firm that came down that street and a number of times didn't see anything? She doesn't ask these type of questions. And the reason is because what I believe is that these are very difficult questions, and you don't want to get confrontational with Paul O'Keefe. This is his brother, and he believes the prosecution hook, line, and sinker. So to put him on the spot right now, to ask him the really hard questions, the real weaknesses in the case, of course, I don't think she's going to do that. It's not nice. So yeah, kind of throw him a softball, right down in the middle of the plate. And this is exactly what she does. And we can hear his response.
Well, as far as at the very early stages, I mean, a crime scene during a blizzard can't be an easy thing to navigate. And yet, they found evidence, they found a sneaker, they found pieces of taillight. Obviously, you're not going to see everything under a couple feet of snow.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see something? I know you're not going to see everything. You're going to see something, one thing, maybe. All those people coming through the snow, you're going to see one thing, maybe one.
So I think they improvised the best they could. Every investigation is going to be kind of scrutinized to some degree. But they did what they had to do with what they had, and with the weather conditions being what they were, they just, like I said, had to improvise and do the best they could. As far as Michael Proctor's comments, I mean, he even said too they were unprofessional, which we agree with. But this guy, his life's been ruined. Getting his personal cell phone, which was something that should never have happened. Josh Levy should never have been intervened in this. An FBI investigation was launched due to cherry-picked evidence or pieces of discovery that was only provided by the defense. Like, this is.
Hold on one second. Now he's saying that the FBI investigation is faulty. So you got to be very careful with this argument here, because the whole argument from the defense is that the Commonwealth and Canton and Massachusetts State Police, their investigation was wrong. Their investigation was faulty and sloppy and everything. We just talked about that with the solo cops. You just said that yourself. But now you're going to argue that the FBI's investigation is problematic. See the problem here? You got to decide which position you're taking here.
This is
pretty unprecedented.
To not even speak to the Norfolk District Attorney's Office, not speak to the Mass Police to see what they have for discovery and evidence. Just to intervene himself in that way, and which casted a shadow of doubt on the investigation. So I think he has a lot of questions that need to be answered.
Yeah. Do you get updates on that?
I do not. I do plan on trying to sit down with him at some point.
Yeah.
Whether I go knock on the door, I sent him an email, but I'm sure I won't get a response. But if I have to go knock on the door and ask for a sit down, that's what I'll do.
Is there anything I haven't asked you about that you want to make sure people know?
In all this, I just want people to remember the actual victim. I think I mentioned it before that it's not the Karen Reed show.
Yeah.
This is about a good man whose life was taken too soon and for selfish reasons, and has created a void in our life that was already an enormous void, but just made it even that much bigger. And I just want people to remember him and want him to get the justice he deserves and that we deserve. Mm-hmm. And that's Karen Reed going to prison.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's exactly what this should have been about. This should have been about justice for John O'Keefe. And that's exactly how this investigation should have gone. And that's how the collection of evidence should have gone. And unfortunately, the reason why we're seeing a little bit more of the Karen Reed show than he wants to see is because there's a lot of problems with this investigation. And we don't have to regurgitate all the problems. Anyone who's been following this case understands it. So it's sad because, yeah, some of the focus is being taken off of John O'Keefe and how he's such a victim, and the entire O'Keefe family is a victim, and now they're being vilified, and it's not right. Yeah, I mean, like they shouldn't be. But on the other hand, you've got real problems with this prosecution and some real problems with the way that this investigation was done, and a real problem with actually trying to prove that Karen Read was guilty, because you got some compelling evidence that, at least let's just talk about legal standards, that it's not proven beyond a reasonable doubt that she actually murdered John O'Keefe. Well, that was the interview of Paul O'Keefe, a very interesting interview, a heart-wrenching interview. I think some interesting observations that we can talk about from that interview. But that will be it for now. Thank you all for watching. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, like, and we will see you next time.